Processor, and it has the standard 64 gigabytes of internal storage. Now this is my first flash-based hard drive computer, so I'm looking forward to using one. There is no spinning hard drive in any of the MacBook Airs. There's also no optical drive, just like the previous MacBook Air. There are two USB ports. There is one audio output, and of course the MagSafe connector, and there is a microphone on the side, and we'll take a look once we get it out of its box. Now, if we look at the back, we'll see some of the specs. We see it's an 11-inch LED backlit widescreen, 1.4 gigahertz processor, Core 2 Duo. Again, 2 gigs of onboard storage, DDR3 SD RAM at 1066 megahertz. This is upgradable to 4 gigabytes in the online store. This also has 64 gigabytes and is upgradable to 128 gigabytes. It has a resolution of 366 by 768 pixels, which gives this a higher pixel density than the 13.3-inch MacBook Pro. And again, we have the NVIDIA GeForce 320M graphics processor with 256 megabytes of DDR3 SD RAM shared with the main memory. We have a built-in iSight video camera, 2 USB ports, headphone jack with built-in stereo speakers, and the speakers actually emanate from behind the keyboard. We also have a mini display port for outputting this to another monitor. Built-in Airport Extreme Wireless networking, so we have 802.11n and Bluetooth with 2.1 plus EDR. Pre-installed Mac OS X and iLife 11, of course. Size and weight, as this was heavily promoted in the keynote, its thinnest point is 0.11 inches and its thickest point is 0.68 inches. And this particular model only weighs 2.3 pounds, and I believe the 13-inch weighs about 2.9 pounds. And just taking a look around the box, of course, we have MacBook Air on the side. Of course, we have a side profile of the MacBook itself. You can see it's sort of a wedge design. Of course, on the side we have the Apple logo. On the other side we have another Apple logo. So let's go ahead and get this out of here. I'm just going to use a razor blade to cut the plastic off. Okay, I should point out that the inside has a nice foam padding in it. We have a little tab here to pull the MacBook out. So this is the back of the MacBook Air. That's the front. It's in a little plastic wrapper. I'm going to take a look at this last. So let's take a look what's inside the box. So we have the power cord. We have the wall wart with the newish MagSafe connector. My aluminum MacBook actually has the previous generation, so I'm looking forward to having this style. Of course, we have the literature, and in here you will not find backup DVDs. Instead, you will find a little USB drive. So here we go, hello, a little instruction booklet. And here it is. This is actually the reinstall drive for the MacBook Air. This actually is inserted into the USB drive. It's essentially a really tiny USB stick. So if we look really closely at this, you can see it inserts right into the USB drive. MacBook Air software reinstall drive, MacBook OS X version 10.6 with iLife 11. And we have the model number and the year. So again, we have instructions on what this is. The USB drive contains the backup copy of the MacBook Air software. In the event you need to reinstall it, this is what you'll use. And also, we can also look on the other side. Of course, there's a little hole through it. And of course, we have the Apple stickers and some software license agreement and warranty information. So beyond that, that's all there is in the box. Okay, so let's get this out of its plastic. Now let's just look at the hardware itself. On the side we have the power connector for the MagSafe connector. We have the USB port. We have a headphone jack. Notice there is no audio input, although if you want to connect an external microphone, I do believe, like all Apple headphone jacks, there is an integrated mic for the headsets, for their headsets that have the microphone built in. We also have the little microphone. This used to be located near the eyesight camera on the display, but it has been relocated here, probably because the display is so thin. You can see it tapers down to a point on the front. Of course, there's a little spot up here to help you lift the lid. On this side, we should have one more USB port, and this is the mini display port. This is so you can connect an external monitor. Notice there is no SD card slot. There is an SD card slot in this area on the 13-inch MacBook Air. Of course, if we look on the bottom, there's just one big panel held together with these screws. If we take a closer look, you can see the screws are a unusual design. They're Torx 6 screws, I believe. I'm not sure. We also have the vent in here, which is typical of all MacBooks. It's kind of hard to see, but you see there's an inlet here, and that's how the MacBook breathes. Of course, we have more screws all along the edge, and we have these little rubber feet or plastic feet. Now let's go ahead and lift the lid. There's a little piece of styrofoam protecting the screen. So here you can see the MacBook Air in all its glory. We have the keyboard, which is a full-size keyboard. The only difference here between this and the 13.6-inch MacBook, or I'm sorry, 13-inch MacBook Air, is the row of keys at top, which are smaller, but otherwise the keys on the bottom are the standard configuration for all Apple MacBooks and Mac keyboards. We have a full-size trackpad, glass trackpad. It does click. The keyboard is not backlit like the MacBook Pros. There is no backlit keyboard on the MacBook Airs at all. So if you look down here, you can see the hinge of the MacBook Air. Again, very similar to other MacBooks. We also have a power button here. Instead of having a dedicated power button like there has been on all previous MacBooks, there's now a key. In fact, I just turned it on. One of the benefits of having a flash-based hard drive is that it starts up very quickly. There we go. That's the fastest I've ever seen a MacBook boot, even though this is probably my weakest Mac ever, at least in terms of its processing power.
English.
So we're going to select English. We're going to lose our focus while we're at it. There we go. Now let's increase the volume. Here the speakers are somewhere behind the keyboard, at least in the i6 teardown, they're somewhere behind the keyboard, along here, along the edge. There's another one over here. Alright, so we got our setup screen. Let's just go to United States. Click US. What I can do now is set up from another Mac, which I want to do, so I'm going to install basically all my software from another Mac on my network, either my iMac, one of my Mac Minis, or my other MacBook Pros. But right now, I'm not going to do this. I'm just going to show you the hardware, and of course, this wouldn't be a Detroit board video unless I compare it to other things. So let me go ahead and do that. Okay, here I have a 13-inch aluminum MacBook. This is a 2009 MacBook before they started calling them MacBook Pros, but the form factor is otherwise the same as the current MacBook. There's no real design difference. But you can see that the MacBook Air, of course, is smaller than the MacBook aluminum MacBook, and you can see it's quite a bit thinner. Probably losing it. If you look at the side, see just how much smaller. Of course, there's far less ports on it. I notice there's also some differences here. There's these nice metal rings around the audio inputs and outputs, or this is the input, that's the output, and there is nothing on this one. Of course, the microphone is now on the side. The microphone on the MacBooks are around the glass. I should note that I do have this case on it, which is very difficult to remove, so I'm just going to leave it on for this demo. It does add some thickness to it. So you can see the MagSafe adapter. There is an Ethernet connector on here, which isn't available on the MacBook Air. If you want one, you'll have to buy a USB adapter. That's always been the case for a MacBook Air. There are 2 USB ports also on the MacBook, and there is a this is the mini DisplayPort out. If you look at the side, again, you can see that same hinge design with the vent on the bottom. If you look back here, we see an optical drive slot on the MacBook, well, aluminum MacBook or MacBook Pro, depending on what you're comparing it to. And then on this, we have another USB port and the display or mini display ports on this side. Now the keyboards do differ a little bit. Again, like I said, they are about the same size below the top row, but if you look up here, you can see the top row on the aluminum MacBook has keys for brightening the screen, brightening the keys themselves, because this is a backlit keyboard. Some other things, the media controllers, volume controllers, and the eject button. And of course there is a power button up here, which is now relocated to the keyboard on the MacBook Air. So if you look at the MacBook Air, we have an escape key, we have the brightness key for the screen, we have the expose key, dashboard key, the other function keys, media control keys, volume keys, and the eject button and the power button. But again, if you look at them side by side, everything below that top row is the same. You can also see that the trackpad is a little smaller on the MacBook Air. It's about the same width, but a little thinner. There are a few other things that the MacBook has that the MacBook Air does not have, and you can see that on the front. There was a little power indicator light on the front near an IR sensor. Both are not present on the MacBook Air. We also have a power indicator back here. So if you press this button, you can see the battery life indicated by these dots on the side. Again, that's not present on the MacBook Air. I should also point out that the MacBook Pro has edge-to-edge glass on the display, while the MacBook Air has an aluminum surround, and they both have this same sort of rubber gasket around the glass so that when it makes contact with the body of the computer when you close the lid, it has a nice rubber seat. Now, Steve Jobs equates the MacBook Air as a merging of the iPad and the MacBook. So let's go ahead and compare the size of the iPad to the MacBook Air. So if you lay the iPad on the MacBook Air, you can see that the iPad isn't as wide as the MacBook Air, and that's largely to do with the fact that the MacBook Air is also a true 16:9 widescreen display. The iPad is not. If you compare the width, you can see that the MacBook Air, of course, is still a little thicker, but they are surprisingly similar. And of course, it's actually thinner at its thinnest edge. Now, if we look at the screens, we can see that they're not exactly the same dimensions. The iPad is a little taller, but it's not as wide as the MacBook. Again, the iPad is about 10 inches. This is 11.6 inches, so it is a little bigger, but that's measuring diagonally. I just want to show you the power adapter. It looks just like every other MacBook power adapter. It has this removable power outlet, so if you are traveling to another country, you can swap these out. You're also given an extension cable, so you can just slide this on and extend the distance from your wall. There you go. And the prongs fold out. We also have these little tabs on the side to wind up your cable for storage. I just want to go ahead and show you guys this MagSafe connector if you're not familiar with them. You can see there's a little light on the side which indicates the charging status of the battery, whether it's fully charged or not. It will be green if fully charged, amber if it needs to be charged. Here we go. This is magnetic, so you can just slide this on and it will catch by itself. You can see that it's green right now, but it should turn to amber once it discovers that the battery is depleted. So it will stay amber until it's fully charged.